All right, Kevin back with you for another episode of the $1 Million Relationships Podcast. And this is going to be an awesome interview today because I've got Cameron Herold with me. Cameron, welcome. So awesome to have you on the show today.
Gavin, thanks very much. Nice to see you again.
You too. And you know what? It's been a while. And I always love giving shout outs because pretty much everybody I've ever had on this podcast was introduced to me by somebody else and stuff, or we met through somebody else. And
Yeah,
you and I met years ago through Joe Polish and the Genius Network group and stuff.
totally. Yeah. Who do you think? Joe and I joined Genius Network. I was a member for 9 years. Joe and I are still really good friends. Yeah, I guess I started Genius Network around 2014,
Okay.
and
Okay.
then you and I met right around then too. So, but who was your first domino? If you were to lean back to the beginning, was there a first person that became kind of the hyper connector from there? Who do you think yours might have
Yeah,
been?
absolutely.
Or was it a mastermind you went to, or
So it was Joe. So I met Joe in 1995 when at the time I had a carpet cleaning and restoration business.
no kidding?
That's
Wow. So
how
you
we
were
met.
you were
And
early, early. Dude, you trusted he was crazy about well, he's still crazy. We're all crazy, but
we are all
that was it.
crazy.
That was forever ago. I knew you were early, early. I didn't know you were that early. That was 30 years ago.
Yeah, yeah. And
Crazy
I
time.
had saved up. I worked for 7 years as a commercial fisherman in Alaska, saving
Hmm.
up money to start my own business. I blew through $300,000 the first year and didn't have a clue what I was doing. And I
Yeah.
found him in a trade publication for the industry.
Wow.
And that's how I got hooked up with him and then started getting coaching from him. And with his help, we completely transformed that cleaning and restoration business. And
Amazing.
uh, and then it was 2007 he launched Genius Network, and I had ended up selling the cleaning and restoration business. I sold it April 19th of '04, and I stayed in his coaching group for the cleaning and restoration industry even for a year after I sold the business. And finally, I was just like, Joe, it just doesn't make sense for me to stay here as much as I love you, as love the people and stuff.
Hmm.
And then he started Genius Network in 2007, and then I
Okay.
ended up joining it in 2008 is when I ended
Okay.
up joining it and stuff.
Crazy. Way
And
back. Yeah,
so,
my first domino, I was just talking to do you remember the name Yannick Silver?
oh heck yes.
So I coached Yannick for 4 years starting in 2008, but it was the summer of 2008 that I met Tim Ferriss at a Warren Buffett event. Tim and I were the two speakers at a YPO event during the Warren Buffett shareholders meeting. Tim and I became friends, and then Tim came up to my home that summer to hang out, and he was staying at my place, and he mentioned something about Yannick Silver. And I thought he was talking about a car. I'm like, what's a Yannick Silver? And so he introduced me to Yannick. And then Yannick and Joe were kind of doing that first Necker. And so that was how I learned about Joe. But I think I would have to say Yannick, the intro to Joe, and then Joe exploding it out from there. And then like mastermind talks and strategic coach and
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
the masterminds. It just makes sense to invest in ourselves, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting looking back and seeing like the reference points and stuff of who was who and what led to what and stuff. It's pretty mind blowing when you start looking back at all that, you know.
Yeah,
Well, I'll tell you, I want to, I've been looking forward to this conversation today, and I'm really looking forward to just like having a deeper conversation with you and about what you do and who you serve. And in fact, you know what, let's just start there with that question, and we'll dive deeper from there. What
sure.
what do you do, Cameron, and who do you serve?
Yeah, my core right now is I have a mastermind community that no entrepreneur is allowed to join.
Okay,
It's called the COO Alliance, and it's only for the second in command to entrepreneurial mid-sized companies. So
okay,
it's COOs from companies in 17 countries. You have to do at least 2 million or greater in revenue to qualify. Most of our members are around the 20 to 30 million mark, some as big as 900 million. But we have members now from 17 countries, and we have in-person and online meetings every month. And then I have a course called Invest in Your Leaders, which is all the core content that I've used to scale the leadership teams at the four different businesses that I built. And then I've also been paid to speak now in 30 countries, and I've written 7 business books. So I've got kind of that whole flywheel going too.
yeah. Well, and I'm not even gonna, act like everybody that would be listening to this knows who you are and knows of your background. So let's go back a little bit because
Sure.
how did you even get in to doing what you do now? What's your backstory, Cameron?
My backstory is I was groomed as an entrepreneur. My dad ran his own company, as did both sets of grandparents. And I ran my first real business. I was 20 years old. I had 12 full-time employees. We were painting houses up in Northern Ontario, Canada. I was doing 6 homes at the same time. So it was a real business. Did that for a few years. And then left and joined a group called College Pro Painters on their executive team, helped scale that and open the West Coast of the United States. I actually opened Washington and Oregon for College Pro Painters back in 93, 94. Then I left and I was a part of a private or an auto body business. We built up what's called Boyd Auto Body in Canada. It's now called Gerber Auto Collision in the United States. It became the largest collision repair chain in the world. Then I joined a private currency business and we built that company up. I was the president of the US or of the West Coast operations, took that company public, exited during the height of the dot-com era, exploded spectacularly as the NASDAQ crashed and we pretty much lost everything. So I joined my best friend who had started a garbage business, our recycling, our junk removal business up in Canada. It was called the Rubbish Boys, and he was rebranding it to 1-800 Got Junk. And I joined him as his COO, and we took 1-800 Got Junk from 2 million in revenue to 106 million in revenue in 6.5 years. And I was the COO of that business. And then I left, that was 19 years ago. I left there. And then since then, I've been paid to speak all over the world. I've coached hundreds of entrepreneurs. I've run the CO Alliance for 10 years. And that's kind of my backstory.
How did COO Alliance come to be, Cameron?
I was sitting in a Genius Network event in Scottsdale or in Tempe at Joe's office, and I was looking at this room and I was like, wow, what a great group of entrepreneurs. And in addition to the Genius Network, we have YPO and EO and Baby Bathwater and GoBundance and Vistage and Maverick and like all these amazing groups for entrepreneurs. Genius Network is still my favorite of them all. But there was nowhere for the COO. And I realized that it was, there were groups for marketers and engineers and lawyers and all these other industry trade groups. And there was really no group that existed for that second in command. So I started the same model that Joe had. My first couple of years, we would have 5 in-person events. Members would pick 3 of the 5 to go to, and
Okay.
it just kind of scaled from there. COVID made us change the model up nicely. So we actually came up with a way better model and we 5x the number of members that we've got. But yeah, that was the starting point, was sitting in his office and realizing there was nowhere for that COO. And entrepreneurs growing themselves is great, but it's almost like a duck with one really strong wing and one weak wing. It's going to fly in a circle.
Mhm.
You really have to grow your team as well as yourself.
Yeah, yeah. So, okay, so when did you launch COO Alliance? What year was that?
2016.
2016. So you're 10
Yeah.
years into this now.
Yeah.
What inspires you most about the work you get to do and the impact that you guys are making, Cameron?
I think it's just my core purpose is to help entrepreneurs make their vision come true. The concept of the golden circle or the whole core purpose, start with why.
Yep.
Simon
Yep.
Sinek. Simon was on our board of advisors 4 years before he wrote that book. Simon and I were hanging out together last week in San Antonio. We were both speaking at the Keller Williams National Conference. I did the opening keynote, he did the midday, and he helped me actually figure out my core purpose. He was in my home one night for dinner and we were talking about why I do what I do. And I've always felt like entrepreneurs were like flies banging their head on the window and they always end up dead on the windowsill. And there was always the shortcut. There was this easier path. And I've always loved helping entrepreneurs find the shortcuts to make their vision come true, whether it's growing the COO or growing their entrepreneurial leadership skills or putting culture systems in place. So all of my books, all my coaching, my course, everything helps entrepreneurs make their vision come true. So that was the purpose for starting it. That's why I do it.
Yep.
And I've always loved, yeah, helping them create those shortcuts.
Yeah. Yeah. So you've been doing this for 10 years now. What's a couple examples of results that you've helped get for clients? And you don't have to name names here. You can if you want, totally your call. But yeah, what's the examples of a couple of results that you've helped clients get you're just incredibly proud of, Cameron?
I need to take this. We need to pause for
Okay.
1 sec, okay?
Okay.
Cameron Herold.